I'm trying so hard, but I really don't know what I'm doing. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Read, share, repeat, where we discuss books from the perspective of an aspiring fantasy author. Me, Carrie Share. Well everyone, it is March 2nd, which means it is my favorite time of the month. The time I get to sit down and do a little bit of a cozy reset. If you're not familiar with my cozy resets, what I like to do is reflect back on the previous month, take a look at some successes and areas I'd like to improve. I also discuss some of my favorites in the previous month. Then I like to do a little bit of tidying up. And then lastly, I look forward to the new month, talk a little bit about the short-term goals I'm going to set, and then we'll look at my content calendar for the month as well. So what I would do in the past is go over 4 different areas of my life that I set different kinds of goals in. That would be writing, reading, content creation, and then lastly, just sort of personal things. However, since I divorced my reading and lifestyle content from my writing content, I figure it's kind of redundant to go over the writing stuff here as well. So instead, from here on out, I'm going to focus on just the 3: writing, content creation, and personal stuff. Starting with reading. I actually thought that I was going to smash this month because by the end of the second week, the week I was on vacation, I had already finished 7 books and I had no inclination that I was going to slow down after that. I was hoping to hit double digits at least before the end of February. However, I don't know if I want to call it a slump, but I just had a run of bad luck with the books I was choosing and I DNF'd 3 in a row. And one right at the end of the month, I was like so determined to finish, it kind of put me in a slumpy mood and I wasn't really able to read anything else. So I finished with 7 and I haven't finished any books since like the 16th. I've been reading, but it hasn't been going well for me. And I'll talk more about those books and the DNFs and why in my reading wrap up later this week. But after that really great reading vacation I had, I was expecting to continue on, but it just didn't end up working out that way, which is kind of a bummer. But I still got 7, which is the same as I got last month. I'm still running a little behind on my yearly goal, especially since I'm not counting rereads towards that goal. And at least one of the books in February was a reread, and at least one of the books in March will be a reread. It doesn't help also that I've had a ton of really long books come up on my TBR. We're talking 4 or 5 that are over 500 pages. So that has contributed a little bit. So I'm hoping to get some of the shorter ones knocked out in March just to tick up that total a little bit. As for my channel goals, I had set a goal of getting up to 20 subscribers last month. That didn't end up happening, but I did manage to get double digits. I'm up to 11 now. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So in March, I hope to continue that slow but steady growth. And as for my personal goals, I wanted to try and drink more water and do more exercise as was my goal in January as well, but it's not working for me. It's just not. Fortunately, I have hit kind of a mental space over the last couple of weeks that has been more time efficient and just more rounded, I suppose I would say. I'm not so laser focused on reading or writing or any one thing. I am starting to see the benefits of kind of shaping my days to include every single thing that I want to do. My only problem is I recently did a day in the life of a working writer vlog, and it really showcased how little time I actually have in my day between all of my obligations. So exercise is going to be a real tough one. Ooh, Unhauls. I didn't even think about Unhauls. So that's it for my February goals. Now I'd like to discuss my February Unhauls. Okay, I've been through my shelves and I found 5 books that I am going to unhaul in this month. First one is Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This is the first in the Wheel of Time series, and again, this is one of those books that I picked up at Half Price Books just because I needed to fill out my shelves and I knew that I did want to eventually read this series, but I'm not super in love with this edition. I think what I'd probably like to do is check out this book from the library and see if it jives with me before I commit to buying any pretty editions. So this is just filler on my shelf, and I'm getting to the point where I don't really need that anymore. In a similar vein is Half a King by Joe Abercrombie. I am a kind of person, when someone is writing in a shared universe, I need to go back to the beginning and start from the very beginning, even if there are many entry points. This was another book that I just picked up from Half Price Books just to fill out my shelves, and I knew I wanted to give Joe Abercrombie a try. Again, my goal is to go all the way back to the beginning with whatever that book is called, The Blade itself, and start from there. And if I like Joe Abercrombie, then I will buy more of his books, but I don't need this random one that I picked up off a shelf. Then, regretfully, I've decided to unhaul A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. I liked this book, sort of, when I read it. I think I gave it a 3.5. I really did like the romance, actually, in this book. I thought that the two love interests actually had kind of great chemistry, and I liked their banter together. But the plot really fell to pieces towards the end, and the author did that thing where the main character has to be like bottom of the barrel IQ in order for the plot to make any sort of sense, and that is a big pet peeve of mine. And while I like the world itself and I like the romance, in the months since I read this book last year, I've just sort of become detached from it. And I don't think I'm going to buy the next one. I think I'll just check it out from the library. So this is another one where I debated, but if I end up loving the second one, I can just buy them again, I guess. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think, if I should just hold on to it and wait for the second book to come out before I make a decision. I'm also going to be unhauling The Kingdom of Sweets by Erica Johansson. I read about 50% of this, maybe even 60% during the Christmas season this last year, and I DNF'd it. I, not intentionally, sort of intentionally, I just sort of lost interest around that time, and it just wasn't very interesting. It wasn't really what I wanted for a dark Nutcracker retelling. Hear my dogs? It just wasn't what I wanted from a dark Nutcracker retelling, which sounds right up my alley, but like I said, it just didn't end up working for me. And eventually it got to be after Christmas, and then it was New Year's, and then it was the new, and I just had no interest of picking it up again. So it's going away. And then finally, I've already mentioned it, The Hurricane Wars by Tia Guanzon. I will link that video in the description and in the cards if you want to watch. Basically, I read the first chapter of this book months ago, last year, when I got it from the library. It had to go back. So I didn't really have a strong opinion of it then, but I knew that the tropes weren't necessarily for me. I'm not a big enemies to lovers fan. I am not a big Raylo girly, and romantasy in general just has been really hit or miss for me. But then I saw this edition at the bookstore, and the consumerism got me. It was just too pretty to pass up. And then unfortunately, I just didn't love it. I didn't like it at all. I DNF'd it. So well done to Tia Guanzon and HarperCollins for getting my money, but I am going to be passing it on to someone who deserves this beauty more than I do. And that's it, just 5. So not too many this month, which I guess in some ways is a good thing. And now let's go over some of my favorites from February. First up, my favorite book that I read in the month of February was definitely The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. And let me tell you, there's no one more surprised by that than me. I am the rare internet denizen that wasn't such a huge fan of Six of Crows. I thought it was fine, but I wasn't in love with it as many of my fellow booktubers are. And so I was a little dubious getting into another Leigh Bardugo novel. But she really surprised me with this one, especially since I'm not a huge historical fantasy person and I really don't love religious trauma as a subplot. But in this book, neither of those bothered me, and I ended up really enjoying it. I listened to it mostly on audio on the trip back from Kansas, and by the time I got back, I was about 80% of the way through, and I just went ahead and bought the physical copy. Which just goes to show you that even if you don't like one book by an author, doesn't mean that they can't surprise you with something completely out of your comfort zone. Next, my favorite non-creative pastime. So this month I decided I would go back and try and learn a little bit more Japanese. I have toyed with the idea of learning it many times over the last 20 years. I was definitely a weeb when I was a teenager and in my high school years. And then 3 years ago, my kids all decided they wanted to do Duolingo. And I said, okay, if you do it, I'll do it. And we all picked a language and we were all trying to learn. And I went with Japanese, and I went I got pretty deep into it before falling off the wagon. And then last month I started following a author tuber and booktuber, Jade Juniper. I will link her information in the description below if you're interested. And she is actually living in Japan, and it just kind of reignited my interest in learning more about the language. Even though I'm not as much into anime and manga as I was when I was a teenager, it is still something I'm interested in, and it puts all those years of being a weeb to good use because I still retain some of the vocabulary. So that's been fun. And this time I'm taking it slightly more seriously than I did before. I'm not just relying on Duolingo. I've downloaded a couple of other apps. I went on Reddit and found some suggestions for ways to actually learn the language rather than just relying on this gamified app that isn't really incentivized to teach you fluency. Maybe this time I'll actually get further and I'll be able to learn real aspects of the language, like hiragana and the katakana and actual turns of phrase that would be useful. That has been kind of fun. I'm doing a little bit every day. I'm trying to focus on the alphabets right now. It's been fun. I'm glad that I started doing it again. And then my favorite YouTuber of February would be Nat at Nerdy Nat Reads. And I have followed Nat for well over a year now, and she just launched her Patreon, I think at the end of January. And what I have noticed is that my favorite YouTubers are the ones where we don't always read the same kinds of books. Nat reads a little bit of everything, but I am strictly, of course, fantasy. I just enjoy learning about different genres of books that I probably will never read, from booktubers who are really passionate about a broad range of books, and Nat definitely falls in that category. I will also have her information linked below. My favorite video that I created this month has to be my Behind the Bandwagon book review for Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. I was a little bit nervous to put it up because I know Brandon Sanderson fans are very passionate, and I also had to contend with the fact that I know that Elantris isn't necessarily the best representative of his work. And yet I still felt like I needed to be fair and not necessarily take that into account, because every author has a debut, and 99% of the time the debut is not the best of their work, and yet I still don't grade them on a curve. And if every author was given a chance beyond just their debut, we would probably see more Brandon Sandersons in the world. Not necessarily his writing style or how prolific he is, but at least we'd have more authors who were given more than just one or two chances. So with that in mind, I did not grade it on a curve. I gave my full and true opinions on it without necessarily taking into account the rest of his body of work or the fact that his fans might not necessarily agree with me. And I had fun making it. And I hope that it will be a jumping off point for me specifically to take more notes and be more thoughtful and cite specifics inside the books for why I do or do not like it, and be just more thoughtful with my reviews, which I mentioned last month as well. So those are my favorites of February. It was kind of an up and down month, what with my Kansas trip right there at the beginning, getting all of that reading knocked out in that week as well. And then this just kick I've been on lately to kind of round out my days and not be so hyper focused on one thing, which has really helped me not feel like I'm abandoning one hobby or goal for another. So that's everything for my February reflections. I'm going to do a little bit of cleaning up. My bedroom is a disaster area. It's just time for a cleanup. So I'm going to get this space tidied up, and hopefully maybe that'll encourage me to spend more time at my desk. Lately, I've been spending a lot of time out on my couch. It's just been a really productive workspace for me, but it's not always convenient. So I'm going to get all of this cleaned up, and then I will check back in with you in a little bit. All right, and now I feel a lot better. I've still got some tidying up to do. I need to get a larger storage space for my cross stitch. I just have too many, and they are spilling all over the place, and it is not visually pleasing to me. So I got to work on that. I also have the sense that if I were to really inspect the underside of my bed, I would not like what I find, but that is a problem for future Carrie to deal with. But yeah, I feel a lot better about this space now. Like, it's not so cluttered that it's making me crazy. So, and with that out of the way, let's look ahead to March. First, with some goals for reading, content creation, and of course, my personal stuff. So my first goal for reading is less focused on like the stats that I want to achieve, like how many books and how many pages and all of that. It's actually something I have been wanting to do for a while, is get a actual annotation system in place. As you all know by now, I have a major annotation project where I want to annotate every physical book that I own. And I have gotten through probably 6 or 7 of them by now, but the annotation system I'm not in love with. Something I've noticed is when I have read all or part of a book before and then I'm going back and annotating it, I kind of know what to look for. So I'm saying, oh, look, this was the mystery. I should tab this, but it's just like, it doesn't feel really purposeful. And then I started annotating The Hurricane Wars by Tia Guanzon. And I feel like I really had a good system there. The things I was annotating were things like lines that I liked, lines that made me cringe. There was a moment where there was an anachronism and I tabbed it. Moments that gave me theories about what was going on, things like that. And I thought I was in a really good flow with the annotation. And then I DNF'd that book because I really wasn't liking it. And there was anyway, we'll talk about it in my next video, which is kind of a disappointment because on the one hand, I was enjoying the annotation process, but the actual reading of the book was not enjoyable. So I want to duplicate that system with the other books that I'm annotating. Fortunately, I'm now annotating The Bone Ship, something I've already read, and I've already fallen back to the way that I was doing it before, which is where I'm just tabbing things I already know about. So hopefully with the next new book that I'm reading fresh and annotating, I can once again get that system in place that I was working on, that I had started with The Hurricane Wars. And if you have any tips on annotating, please drop them in the comments below. I'm trying so hard, but I really don't know what I'm doing. And then my second goal for reading is to read more books that I actually like. I got a comment on one of my 60-second book reviews on TikTok that it seems like most of my reviews are negative. And I don't necessarily disagree. A lot of my reviews are right down the middle, around like 3 or 3.5, things that are not great, but not terrible. And that is pretty reflective of my actual opinions. I read a lot of books that I feel are just fine because it honestly does take a lot to make me completely happy with a book. I tend to read pretty critically, and I don't know if that's just because I'm also a writer and I'm nitpicking, or I'm thinking, oh, I wouldn't have done that. I would have done it this way. Possibly. I'm not consciously doing it, but I can definitely see how that would be something I'm subconsciously doing. So with that in mind, not only I would like to read more books that I like. Of course, I can't always predict that, especially with the system I have in place for building my TBRs. It's really just depending on like what's available at the library, my random draws and whatnot. Now I do got my 2025 priority list and I do anticipate liking most of those. So hopefully that still works out. I just want to examine more deeply my feelings when I'm reading these books. And determine, is this just because I'm being hypercritical as an author, or is it something I can take a step back from being like, yeah, that's fine actually, even though I don't love it as an author. So that is something I'm going to just try and be more thoughtful when I'm reflecting on my opinions as a book, and try and bring that out more in reviews so that my reviews don't feel as negative. It's never intentional. All my reviews are completely honest about the way that I felt. But again, I'm just sort of wondering, are those feelings coming from a completely detached place? And then lastly, I am going to try and hit double-digit books again. I've said this before, but I do want to see that double-digit number. And I'm so disappointed that I didn't get it last month after coming so close. Not even so close. There was no reason for me not to read 3 books in 2 weeks, and I just didn't. So March is significantly longer, so I'm hoping that works in my favor. I've also got 1 novella on my TBR, a book I'm rereading, a couple books I'm excited about, so hopefully those will propel me to read faster and more so that I'm hitting that double-digit number. So that's it for my reading goals. For my goals for this channel, a little look behind the curtain. I mentioned earlier that I got 3 new subscribers this month, but as of like just a couple of days ago, that was actually 6. And then over the last 2 or 3 days, I've hemorrhaged 3 followers. And while that doesn't seem like a lot for a channel that has less than 20 subscribers, that is a big number, and it was kind of like disappointing for me. And I have always said that creating content really isn't about the audience or the following or internet clout or anything. I really just want to have a place where I can shout into the void, because I don't have anyone in my real life that I can talk to about books and things. So really this channel is it's a place for me to talk about books and feel like I have an outlet for all my thoughts on what I'm reading. But also I have found that it's just fun. It is no longer just that. It is also a hobby. It has effectively replaced my video game habit. And while I don't need subscribers for that to remain true, I would like to be making content that is adding something to the space and not just shouting into the void. So for this channel, I would like to start being a little bit more thoughtful about how I'm putting my videos together, be a little bit more aesthetic. I've never been an aesthetic girly. You're never gonna get those beautiful reading vlogs that like you get from like Reagan at Peru's project. It's never gonna be that, but I would like to be more thoughtful about what I am putting into my vlogs. Not just the reviews and like my thoughts on the books themselves, but also just making them a little bit more enjoyable for you guys to watch. I'd also like to make more short form content. The vast majority of my shorts, even before I moved over to this channel, have been 60-second book reviews. And I really do like making those. I really do find them fun. There's a certain challenge of trying to condense a book review into 60 seconds, where half of it is like a brief summary of the book and then the other half is what your thoughts are. So I'm going to be continuing with those, but I would like to start thinking of more ideas on what other kinds of short form content I can create. I don't have too many ideas yet, but in March, I'd like to start thinking about those ideas so that I can maybe start implementing them in Q2. And then lastly, again, a goal that I have no control over except for what I put out into the world, and that is to continue growing this channel. I had originally set this goal at 20 like I did last month, but after I lost those 3 followers, I'm gonna set my sights a little bit shorter and just go for 15. I would love to hit 15 subscribers by the end of March. I know I can't really control that. A lot of it is algorithm, and obviously there's something that I'm producing that isn't resonating, which goes back to like just being more thoughtful about what I'm putting out there, but I'm manifesting it. That's it for my content creation goals. Finally, some personal goals. The first and biggest one is I need to start saving money. I got a fairly sizable raise at the end of the year, right at the end of the year. And now that we're past the holidays, I need to start being more thoughtful about socking some of that money away. I've talked about it a few times, but one of my career goals is to open an independent bookstore eventually. So I would like to start saving some money towards that goal. So just being more thoughtful about putting some of my funds in savings and leaving it there so that I can have that available for that eventuality of getting my degree and starting the process of opening the store. And then secondly, I really do need to improve my self-care. I am working on it. I've seen some big strides, especially over the last couple of weeks, but I am a kind of person where I'm like constantly feeling the need to be productive, and any moment that is not spent being productive, it feels like a waste. Then what happens is I get burnt out, and then I spend 3 weeks in bed doing nothing, and then I feel even worse because I've spent 3 weeks in bed doing nothing until like I go through this like depressive episode where I feel like a piece of shit, but I can't will myself to get out of bed because of the burnout. And it's just like this self-perpetuating cycle until finally I'm able to like drag myself out of it. Obviously, the best thing to do would be to pace myself, give myself time to rest a little bit every day, at least a little bit every week, so that I'm not running into the burnout. So I just need to treat moments of rest and moments of leisure as self-care, because for me at this point, it really is. And to that point, my last goal is to spend a little bit more time doing non-productive hobbies. Like I said, that video I made for my other channel where I kind of cataloged every step of my day to kind of find where I can squeeze in writing, it was really instructive to me I already knew it, but it really illustrated the point of how little time I have left myself in the day to do anything. Because I have a day job and I've got school and I've got my kids' activities and I've got content creation. I've also got reading and writing and all the stuff that I'm trying to do. I truly cannot have it all. There's simply just not enough time in the day. And if I'm spending every minute of my day trying to maximize productivity and efficiency, I'm missing out on things that are actually fun. Which is not to say that the content creation and the reading and stuff isn't fun, but it's a task in my head. Reading a book checks a task in my brain, and writing 1,000 words checks a task. I need to make leisure time a task. So that is it for my goals for the month of March. And to wrap up this video, we are going to take a quick look at my content schedule for March. Okay, first up, as you can see, today is March 3rd, and we are doing our March Cozy Reset. Then on March 6th, we will be doing my February reading wrap-up. No surprises there. That's pretty typical of the first week of the month. Then on March 10th, I will be doing the A to Z book tag. I haven't done a tag in a while, so I'm kind of looking forward to it. And then on March 13th, I have a little bit of a question mark because I'm not super sure what I want to put here. I haven't decided. I'm thinking of maybe doing a 3x3x3 or a tier ranking video. I just need to decide what the 3x3x3 or tier ranking subject would be. I am actively soliciting suggestions for that. And then on the 17th, I will be doing just a weekly reading vlog. And then on the 20th, I will be following that up with a series review of the Book of the Ancestor. My intention is to have the third and final book of that series complete, and then I will do a complete series review. Spoilers abound. Then on the 24th, I will be doing just a week in my life vlog. On the 27th, I will be doing my adventures with annotating. I'm really looking forward to this one. I'll be doing Gideon the Ninth. And then rounding out March on March 31st with my April TBR. And with that, that is everything I have for today. If you have any suggestions for what I can do for that March 13th video, please drop them in the comments below. I'm looking at maybe doing like a 3x3x3, but I kind of don't know what the subject would be. And that does take a little bit of time to plan. So I need to like think of something quick if that's what I want to do. I could do a tier ranking video, but again, what would I tier rank? Any suggestions you have, drop in the comments below. I am here to have fun and make content, but it's also for you guys too. So anything you'd like to see, just let me know. And with that, that is everything. Thank you so much for watching. I so appreciate it. If you like my content and want to support the channel, please like and subscribe or consider leaving a comment down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, leave me a shamrock emoji for March. In my next video, I will be doing my February reading wrap up. I hope you look forward to it, and I will see you then. Bye.